Welcome, everyone, to the Information's TITV. My name is Akash Pasricha. It is Tuesday, September 9th, and it is iPhone Day here on the stream. We've got Apple doing its flagship September iPhone event. We're going to get into some analysis about that in just a bit. We've also got a big guest coming on the show. The CFO of MercadoLibre is joining us for a very special conversation. I'm excited to dive deep into the world of e-commerce in Latin America. And finally, we're going to get to a big story that we just published about Andreessen Horowitz's venture capital returns. It is a level of detail that is rare to get inside the VC giant. We're going to talk all about that story. But let's start with the big news of the day, Apple. It is September, and as has become a fall tradition, Apple is unveiling its new iPhones today. We've already heard a lot of the details about what to expect, but I want to bring on our reporter, Wayne Ma, to have a bit of a broader discussion about what this year's iPhone means for the broader Apple ecosystem. Wayne, thanks for joining us. It's your first time on the show. Glad to have you.
Hey, Akash, thanks for having me.
So, look, I want to start with sort of the AI angle to this year's event, because last year's event really was all about Apple Intelligence. That was the thing that came out quite loud. This year, we've heard less about that, and it's more about the thinner phone. And so, let's put the form factor of the phone aside for just a minute. What Where are we at in the Apple AI story, and does it even matter whether or not AI is good or not on the iPhones right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the moment, Apple's kind of rebuilding its AI and Apple Intelligence. After last year, where they weren't able to really promise and deliver what they said they would, and so I think the problem is that people expect more and more from AI these days. You want to naturally interact with your phone with your voice. You want to change your settings just with with a simple sentence or voice command, and so there's the expectation there, but the reality hasn't matched up.
Right. And so is there any evidence that people actually will or won't buy new phones based on how good the AI is right now for Apple products?
I don't think so. Tim Cook said earlier this year that in markets where Apple Intelligence existed, sales were up. But I don't really buy that. I think that at the end of the day, people can get a lot of their artificial intelligence tools from apps, and so as long as they can get ChatGPT on their phone or Gemini or Perplexity, I think they'll be happy with that for now.
And what about other smartphones? Have you been paying attention to how good the AI is on other smartphones and whether or not that has moved the needle for them?
I think with Google and Samsung, there's a bit of an edge because you can use their models are more mature. They're better than Apple Intelligence, and
Hmm.
as a result, you can control your phone in ways that you can't right now with the iPhone.
Hmm. And so people will actually buy those phones for the AI?
I still don't think so. I think at the end of the day, a lot of people are locked into the Apple ecosystem. They still
Right.
prefer other things like usability, the user interface, the ease of use. And so at the end of the day, people who I don't think they're going to change their or switch phones just because of AI.
Right, right. Now let's talk about the form factor changing. Apple has generally done very incremental changes to the actual feel of the phone in your hand. This year is probably one of the biggest changes they've made in a while. What do you make of that decision to finally start thinning the phone or actually changing some significant parts about it?
Well, Apple has kind of four phones, four different models every year, and they've always had this one automatic slot. They tried a mini version for the iPhone 12 and 13, then they tried a plus version for the 14, 15, and 16. And in all those cases, sales weren't very good. They were below expectations. And so this year and next year, they're going to be trying a thin phone. That's like, now that they've tried small and large, that's like one of the only few options they have left. And I guess they're hoping that it'll be aesthetically pleasing, lighter, and maybe that'll like draw people's attention to it. But there's lots of compromises with that, mainly in battery life. It'll have much less battery than what normal consumers are used to with iPhones, and so it remains to be seen whether consumers will buy it.
Do you think it's going to work?
I think it might work better than the Plus and the Mini, but enough to move the needle in sales, I'm not sure. In fact, Apple has allocated only about 10% of their production capacity to the thin phone because they also are worried that sales aren't going to be that great.
Right. This is even with the battery life being less. I guess people are willing to take that hit, I guess, to have a thinner phone.
Yeah, some people might.
Right. Talk to me a little bit about, Apple in the AI race broadly. I want to go back to that. You've done a lot of reporting on how Apple is trying to catch up now. Where are we in that story, and what are you watching for in the months ahead with respect to
Sure.
AI?
I mean, Apple, I think at the beginning wanted to train their own models, completely own everything, um, and not really use outside partners to help. And so, I think what you've seen over the last few months is that they're internally more open to using models by Google or Anthropic or OpenAI. They're still kind of deciding between the three which ones to use, and so they might end up, using third-party models or in combination with their own models in order to develop, the best product for consumers rather than just try to do it all themselves.
Great. Well, Wayne, thanks for coming on the show. I know it's your first time, but I'm excited to have you on more and more as the Apple story and other stories, NVIDIA chips. I mean, you cover so much. So it's definitely a byline to watch, folks, if you haven't. That is Wayne Ma, our Apple reporter here at The Information.
Thanks for
Okay.
having me.
Well, e commerce is a booming business in Latin America, and few companies know that space better than MercadoLibre. The company operates in Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina. Its market cap is more than 118 billion US dollars, but its specialty isn't just e commerce. MercadoLibre also has a ginormous fintech business which operates under the name Mercado Pago. It extends credit and issues credit cards. It is a fascinating story, and I'm excited to welcome to the show the company's CFO, Martin de los Santos. Martin, welcome to TITV. It's so great to have you here.
Great to be here, Akash. Pleased to meet you. Thank you.
So, look, I want to have a conversation here that touches on a couple aspects of your business because there's so much we could talk about. Where I want to start, though, is with the e-commerce business. And given that our audience is mostly people in North America, how is it that buying behaviors in Latin America change are different with respect to e-commerce compared to North America?
Yeah, Akash, I think if you look at Latin America, we're probably 10, 15 years behind the US, but the behaviors are similar. What happened in Latin America, and what we found when we started the company 25 years ago, is that the infrastructure was not there, right? So we had to build our own payment solutions that you mentioned, Mercado Pago, which started as an acquiring business, but then it evolved into a digital bank as it is today. We have to build our own fulfillment infrastructure. 15 years ago, we didn't touch one single package. Today, 98% of the packages that are sold on Mercado Libre go through our fulfillment infrastructure. We have more than 30 warehouses throughout the region. So we have to basically build it from scratch as opposed to the US, but the behavior is similar. People want fast shipping, free shipping, have availability of product, a good user experience, credit to buy on the marketplace. So the same thing that you find in more developed countries.
Hmm.
In America, but we are, as I mentioned, 10 years behind. Penetration
Right.
of e-commerce in Latin America is 15% compared to more than 20% in the US or 40% in China. So we're making big progress to get into those levels. And this is why our business is growing so rapidly.
And so, from your view, it's not a demand issue. People are ready to buy online. It's an infrastructure issue. It's not having credit cards. It's not having the right shipping in place. Is that the idea?
Definitely. I mean, if you look at credit card availability of credit card in Mexico is less than 14%. Most of the population do not have a credit card. As you can imagine, buying online is
Hmm.
it's a very bad user experience if you don't have a credit card. So we develop our own credit card. We develop our own buy now, pay later. We have a digital wallet that you can put your money into, your digital money into Mercado Pago. So,
Hmm.
as an example, in Mexico today, 30% of the transactions that are bought in Mercado Libre are paid using our own payment methods. So
Hmm.
those transactions might not have happened if we didn't have the infrastructure that we built with Mercado Pago. That's just one example of what's happening in Latin America.
So then, as you think about competition, we're going to get to the fintech story in a second. But as you think about competition on the e-commerce front, right? Penetration is so low because, for example, people don't have the tools to buy some of these goods online. We have e-commerce players from China. We even have Amazon. These discount players are making so much inroads in Latin America. How is it that people are buying then, goods from those e-commerce players if the fintech sort of category is so underdeveloped?
Yeah, I think, first of all, Brazil, let's take as an example, it's probably one of the most competitive markets in the world. The reason why there's so much competition, like you mentioned, your local retailers, you have the Amazon, the Asian players. The reason why there is so much competition is because the opportunity is so large. I mean, it's a market. We grew in Brazil 30% our volume last year. And keep in mind that we are at a very large scale. After 20 years, we continue to grow at the rate of a startup. So the opportunity is so big, and this is the reason why there are so many competitors. And obviously, the infrastructure has been built. We made a lot of progress in that front, but obviously, other players are also doing the same thing. So there's no reason why we don't expect we won't see the penetration of e-commerce at the similar levels as you see in China or in more developed countries in Latin America. It's just a matter of time.
But then how do you defend against those Asian retailers that are coming in at a discount?
I think our competitive advantage continues to be our logistic infrastructure. We have built the fastest and more sophisticated logistic network in Latin America. We deliver more than 75% of the products that we sell within 48 hours. This is something that is very difficult to replicate. More than the majority of the products that are sold on MercadoLibre are offered with free shipping, which is an important part of eliminating friction for people moving online, the cost of shipping. And obviously, the payment solutions that we have built. As I mentioned, on average, for the whole ecosystem, more than 20% of the items paid are paid with our own payment solutions. So that's an edge. And at the end of the day, it's the user experience. We have 25 years of building a product, bringing assortment and supply into our platform. We have more than 18,000 developers that are working day and night in improving the user experience. So many things that we're doing to improve. The NPS is at all-time high within MercadoLibre.
And you mentioned the free shipping. One of the moves that the company made is reducing the price point at which it offers free shipping. And that to me felt like a clear play to sort of fight off some of those discount retailers. I mean, you're clearly offering more for less in that way. Is that a short-term solution, or is that going to stick around for the long term?
No, this is Akash. This is something that we have been doing for the past 7 years. We introduced free shipping in Brazil back in 2017 when we had our logistic infrastructure built. At that time, the threshold for free shipping was 120 reais, and we have been decreasing it as we continue to expand and improve operational efficiencies in our logistic infrastructure and lowering the cost of delivery. We were able to lower the free shipping threshold first to 80 reais, as it was a couple of quarters ago, and this quarter we lower it to 30 reais.
Right.
Strategy that has been taking place for many years. It has worked very nicely for us. If you look at the past 5 years, we doubled the market share in Brazil, and part of that was because of the free shipping that we offer. So it's not temporary. This is something that we're doing over time. We have been doing it, and it has been paying off for us very, very nicely.
But how do you then think about that in terms of your bottom line, your profitability?
Yeah, at the end of the day, we are investing in the lower threshold of free shipping as we had invested in the past, where we are getting more users, we get more repetition. When people come into our platform, they tend to buy more things. They even things are higher ASP as well. So we have proven this playbook in the past, and we don't look at the profit of individual transaction. We look at the relationship with the user. Then we can cross fintech products. So it has played out for us. And we're very optimistic, and we have seen the results, right? We have seen our acceleration on our volume after we lowered the threshold last quarter.
Right. I want to get to AI, but I just want to ask you broadly about this idea of discount e-commerce players gaining market share, not just in Latin America, but around the world. I mean, we've seen it here in North America as well. What do you think this move to discount retailers and consumers' preferences to buy from these discount retailers, how do you think that changes the e-commerce landscape, broadly speaking?
I think for the most part, it increases the pie, right? These are transactions that might not have been happening in the past, and we are becoming more involved in those. So I think it's net positive for the industry, and obviously we are adjusting also our offering to participate in those segments, the new segments of the market, which are low ASP, the low ticket items. So I think it's positive for the market overall. And we, being leaders in e-commerce in all of the countries where we operate in Latin America, we will capture our fair share of those segments, and that will be possible to our users and to MercadoLibre.
But do you think it gets to a point where the quality of the product starts to suffer at all?
We should, it shouldn't. At least we try, we put a lot of attention in the supply that we offer within our marketplace. So in our case, the quality is not, does not suffer. What we offer are lower ticket items with more, frictionless user experience because of free shipping. But it doesn't necessarily mean that in our case, the products are lower value. You might have other cases where it is, products shipped out of the country,
Right.
but for the most part, in our case, it's not the case.
Right. So we are a technology publication. We cover AI at the intersection of just about everything. And I wanted to ask you about whether or not businesses are moving to adopt AI as quickly in Latin America as they are in North America, and how you're thinking about that at MercadoLibre.
Yeah, we have been using AI for many years at MercadoLibre. If you think about our acquiring business, which we started back in 2003, our fraud prevention models are, machine learning models that use AI to try to determine in a fraction of seconds whether a transaction is fraudulent or not. Before taking the CFO position, I started the credit business within MercadoLibre. And we have models that use, thousands of variables on users to determine the quality of credit for those users. So those type of models we have been using for many years. More recently, we have adopted LLM models, and we have been using them in many different fronts. Let me give you an example. On CX, now we can answer most of the questions from our users using models, right? And we used to have about 10,000 people taking care of questions from users. Now we have 7,000, but the business has tripled in terms of volume. So we can service a lot better our users, apply those AI models. Consumer facing, questions that our users pose to merchants on our marketplace. We used to have to wait until the next day for a merchant to answer a question. Now we have these models that can answer right away, and that improves the user experience and the conversion of the transaction.
Right.
Many, many different fronts. So we have adopted, obviously, the 18,000 developers that I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
AI to ship code at a faster rate. So in many different fronts, we have been adopting AI. And obviously, the next wave would be to basically change the way our users interact with our platform. We want to have an AI, fintech advisor to our users that will
Right.
have to interact in much user-friendly way with them. So we're working those, but those are the next wave of innovation that we will implement.
Are you using it to reduce your headcount at all at the company?
Not really. I mean, given the growth that we're having, we're growing the headcount, fortunately, because the business is growing. But what we're doing is we're getting more things out of the same number of people, or more productivity within
Right.
our.
Right.
We think that, at least for now, it has not replaced people. I think it has empowered people to do better and to operate in a much more efficient way within Mercado Libre.
Now, MercadoLibre has a fast growing advertising business as well. And one of the topics that we've written about at the information is the possible threat that the advent of AI agents, for example, doing these purchases for people might have to the advertising sector. Do you think about that at all as you build out your advertising business? The fact that, hey, we're building it out, but advertising could be a very different game tomorrow if AI agents are changing the advertising game altogether.
Yeah, I think obviously we do think about that. We try to leverage AI to produce better advertising, to do better segmentation for that. But also we are very aware that there might be some rules, the rules of the game might change. So we are aware
Right.
of that. But at the end of the day, last year we had more than 100 million buyers within Mercado Libre.
But how are you thinking about the rules of the game changing then? I mean, are you using your own AI agents to within your advertising business? I mean, how do you think about that?
Right now, we're using AI mostly to create content for advertising, but also we are looking at the way the advertiser will interact with our users. So we will be in the middle of it, but we want to make sure that we are, we take part of it, and this is why I think at this point, at least to be honest with you, we have more questions than answers on that front. But we have a team that are looking at that, and they're paying attention to the changes that are happening within the advertising business. We have more than $1 billion business in advertising, growing very rapidly. But we are aware that changing technology might disrupt that business. But we want to be, very agile to take advantage of those changes as opposed to suffer from those changes.
Right. So I hear you saying you're aware of it, but you're not concerned of the threat, is what I'm saying. What I'm
We're
hearing.
always concerned about all types of threats, but we do have a team of people who are focused on that and
Right.
try to be aware. So concerned, we're always concerned, But we're optimistic because of the position that we have and the leverage that we have within Latin
Yeah.
America.
What's your biggest concern right now as it relates to MercadoLibre? It's such a big company. You've built a huge company. What's the number one concern that Martin has right now?
I think at the end of the day, it's culture. I mean, we have been successful because of the talent of people we have been able to attract and retain, and the culture of the company and the way we execute. We know fairly well what needs to be done. The opportunity is huge in fintech, in commerce, in advertising. At the end of the day, it's execution. We have been executing at a very high level for the past 25 years, and we need to continue to do that. So I
Right.
think the
Right.
main thing is to continue to attract talent, to execute at the same level, and to
Right.
maintain the culture that has made us successful so far.
And where do you see the company in 2030?
I think we're gonna be, much larger in terms of e-commerce. Plenty of growth ahead of us. As I mentioned, the penetration is very small, but we are making significant progress on bringing people online. We haven't talked about the fintech opportunity, but fintech is even bigger opportunity. The financial inclusion that you see in Latin America is extremely low. I mean, I mentioned the case of Mexico, but the same thing could be said about Argentina. So we have the aspiration in 2030 to be the largest digital bank in Latin America. We are making significant progress. For instance, our credit book has doubled year on year. Asset under management more than doubled as well. Our number of users are growing 31% year on year.
Do you see the fintech business being bigger than the e-commerce business eventually?
Yeah. They're about the same size. Probably fintech is growing a little bit faster today than
But
commerce.
eventually, you think it'll be bigger?
It might be bigger because of the rate of growth today. But the important thing about MercadoLibre is the ecosystem. The fact that we have a commerce business very intertwined with the fintech business and they separate from each other. That's the secret of MercadoLibre, and that's an important strategic advantage that we have in both businesses. So they will both grow very, very nicely in the coming.
But so no predictions on whether the fintech business will be bigger than the e-commerce business in the next 5.
I have to. It's like you're asking me, like if I had to choose between two sons, right? So I think both businesses will do very, very, very well, and we're very happy with the.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, what I did want to ask you though is you have the e-commerce business, you have the fintech business. Come 2030, do you see an opportunity with a third major line of business that we can expect the company to get into?
I think, yeah, we have plenty of room to continue growing within Latin America. We didn't talk about the geographic differences between the countries, but you mentioned Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil, which are the biggest countries.
Yeah.
All the other countries within Latin America, they have combined the size of Mexico, and we need to deploy the ecosystem to those markets. We are leaders in those markets, but there's many products that we haven't reached there yet. So we have plenty of to do in commerce and fintech. I think advertising is probably an opportunity that is huge for us. And if you execute correctly, I think they're a very large business for us. It's a large business today, growing at 35% year on year, but it could be much larger if we execute correctly.
Does MercadoLibre use their own data centers right now?
No, for the most part, we use cloud infrastructure.
Okay. Do you see yourself moving to your own data centers or maybe building out your own cloud business one day?
I think these are the things that we discussed strategically with the team. I mean, there's some pros and cons of both. But I think if you ask me a prediction, I think maybe 5 years from now, we will have a combination of both. But that would be my guess.
Right. And I've got 2 more questions for you. Very quickly, we had the provincial election results in Argentina this week. How are you thinking about that in the context of your business?
I think one thing that we always talked about is that either when macro is doing well or macro is doing bad, the most important thing for us is the type of things that we do within our ecosystem, right? Because the secular trend of people moving online is so strong that macro might help us with one percentage point of growth or less. That's one thing. We are very excited about the things that have been done in Argentina for the past year. Lowering inflation. The government is running with a balanced budget. I think the normalization of the FX market. So many things that it took many millions of people out of poverty over the past year and a half. We are going through certain stability of the midterm elections. This is something that usually happens at this time of the election process. So we have seen a very strong recovery in the first half of the year, but we are optimistic in the long term. We are investing in Argentina. We recently announced the launch of the credit card in Argentina.
Right.
Third fulfillment center in the country. So even though there are certain instability in the short term because of the election, we are optimistic, and we have a very strong position in Argentina.
Have you talked to Javier Milei at all?
I mean, our people, I haven't talked personally. Our people in Argentina are obviously very close to the government, and they're in touch with them. I don't know if they talked recently, but again, we are positive about what's going on in Argentina, despite the turbulence that we've seen macro-wise in the last couple of weeks.
Right. Last question for you. You know, a lot of times we ask companies that are based outside of North America, well, what are you aspiring to? What companies are you aspiring to in North America? I want to flip it around and I want to ask you the question, what do you think businesses in North America can learn from businesses in Latin America?
I think operating in Latin America in an environment that is changing and is so challenging, is so diverse. Remember, we operate in 18 different countries, right? I think the resilience that we have within our companies, we are very used to, trying, failing, trying again. So we are very resilient,
Mhm.
operate in a very complex macro environment. So I think that's something that it's in our DNA, and it's probably, it comes more natural to us than maybe
Mhm.
companies operating in more stable scenarios, right? But that's
Mhm.
a competitive advantage to us, right? Being able to operate in complex macro and complex regulatory environments.
And we've got 1 minute left, so I do want to ask you actually one part that I forgot to mention, which is that we talked about AI. One of the things that I've been fascinated by is when new technology comes up, it often has the potential to help uh, countries like in countries in Latin America sort of leapfrog some of the issues that North America has long struggled with. Do you see that as an opportunity for AI in Latin America to just go over issues like, financial literacy or, getting people embedded in the financial system? I mean, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think what it will, like I mentioned earlier, right? AI will enable us to have a digital, financial advisor available to everybody within our ecosystem, and we're working on that. And that definitely will help in countries of Latin America where most of the population have been left out of financial services. It will help them not only to access better financial products, but also to learn and understand them and operate them better. A lot of times banks tend not to lend to people because they don't know how to handle a loan or how to handle a credit card and so on. So I think with these tools, we will be able to operate, to educate a lot better the population, and that will enable them to access products in a broad, a much broader way. So I think it's definitely positive for the population, not only on fintech but also on commerce.
Right. Great. Well, Martin, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure having you. It's a fascinating business, and I look forward to having more conversations with you as we see both the e-commerce and the fintech businesses grow over time. That was Martin de los Santos, the CFO at MercadoLibre. Okay. Well, crypto has been kind to many companies lately, including Andreessen Horowitz. The company's crypto funds from 2020 and 2022 have done much better than other comparable venture capital funds. And as is often the case, a few select investments have had an outsized impact on the fund's returns. I want to bring on Natasha Mascarenhas, our venture capital reporter, who broke that story to tell us more about what she found. Natasha, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you.
It's great to be here.
Okay, so what did you find? Let's get into the numbers.
Let's do it. So I found that Andreessen Horowitz, very famous venture firm, as every listener and watcher knows, is actually really having a great winning streak when it comes to its crypto investments. And so really just giving some context here, Andreessen announced a $4.5 billion crypto fund in 2022 at a really tough time for crypto. I mean, Bitcoin was down, Coinbase shares were down, and they stayed down. And they haven't raised one since. So this is the most recent look we have into how their crypto-specific funds are doing. That $4.5 billion fund is indeed in a top decile of returns. And
Top decile meaning like the top 10% of all venture fund performance. Is that the idea?
yeah, top quartile. And so you're really seeing it be like a success story for them. And a time
Okay.
when a lot of firms are having success stories.
Okay.
We're looking at TVPI, which is a metric that tracks the value of a firm's holdings, not DPI, which is even more meaningful, which is the actual capital that's returned to
Right.
investors.
Okay. So let's talk about the returns for each of these funds, because you had some numbers for all of the crypto funds that they've raised, which is quite remarkable to find any of that. So let's go through it. I mean, Where do you want to start? The first fund, maybe? Let's talk about how that one's doing. That one we know about, though.
Yeah, so that one has been really well covered. I think it really like put their crypto efforts or
Right.
something in
Okay,
the map.
so
That
that's
one's
fun
doing
one.
well. Coinbase, everyone's happy about the Coinbase investment. The
right.
next one, Crypto 2 in 2020, that was a $515 million fund, so a little bit higher than the first fund. That fund is also in the top quartile. Its investment there was in that firm's performance was driven by its investments in Solana Labs and other cryptocurrency startups where it didn't just own equity but also tokens, which is actually a core part of the story.
Right. Right. Okay. And I want to get into that, but what about funds 3 and funds 4? What do we know about that?
Yeah, so I wasn't able to learn Fund 3, but Fund 4, like I mentioned, that's the one that's the most recent one. It's their biggest crypto fund, 4.5 billion. Its TVPI was 1.4x. And so meaning for every dollar that it's invested, it's sort of gotten 1.4 in value out of it so far.
So now let's talk about that part of the story that you mentioned, which is this idea that some of the gains for these, I say, newer crypto funds. I mean, it's a lot of crypto funds now have turned into these RIAs, right? Which is this idea where they can buy tokens and not just hold equity in these companies. So do we have any color on what proportion of these gains is attributed to tokens versus equity at all?
It's a necessary part of their strategy, right? To be able to own both. Each of the funds, that I just mentioned have had direct exposure into Bitcoin and Ether, as well as direct exposure into startups in crypto and their respective tokens. I don't have the exact breakdowns, but to me, that's a really key part of the strategy. My question is how much is a direct Bitcoin holding doing for Andreessen Horowitz versus a direct equity holding in a cryptocurrency startup that's building around it or benefiting from it?
And so that's one of your questions. What are the other questions as it relates to Andreessen's venture portfolio at large that you're trying to answer for yourself right now?
Yeah, like every limited partner I speak to wants to hear about the distributions that a firm is actually making back to their investors. It's really easy to show value on paper, and that's what we saw in some of the early innings of 2021 when there was some really steep markups. Now, I think it actually does say something to even have a valuable firm on paper, but to me the big question going forward is DPI. The other big question going forward is how is the firm's newer focus on artificial intelligence impacting the rest of their returns? In my story that went out today, we do have a sense of the funds outside of crypto specific investing. And those ones, while they're not by any far worse performing, they're not as explosively successful as crypto just yet. They're generalist firms, the firms that have everything from Clubhouse to XAI, to SpaceX and Anduril. Those firms obviously have some really rock star names, but they also have some names weighing them down. And so my question would be, is Andreessen Horowitz able to replicate its crypto playbook in other sectors? And will we see some of its later stage firms that are, early in their life be able to tell better stories if we fast forward a few years?
One of the last things I want to get your take on is a couple weeks ago on the show, we had Josh Wolf from Lux Capital on the show. He was talking to Jessica Lesson. And one of the things he was talking about was the prospect that Andreessen Horowitz could maybe go public one day. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is my favorite dinner party topic. Andreessen Horowitz, IPO chatter, as well as general.
Is it really your favorite dinner talk? Like, it's your favorite talk, really?
It
I'm
gets
kidding.
people
Keep
going.
going. Keep going. Okay, keep going.
It gets people going. General Catalyst, same way, right? Like there's been a lot of chatter about that as well. You hear both leaders of both of those firms not talk about it as a venture firm anymore. They're talking about it as companies. So to me, this gives us a picture into how some of its diverse revenue streams are doing so far. So I think that's, obviously a green light for them there, but it needs to be consistent and they need to show it over a long period of time. Andreessen Horowitz converted to an RIA, I believe, in 2019. And so I think it still has a little bit of storytelling to do before it maybe goes down that route. And for now, from interviews I listened to with Mark Andreessen, it looks like he's not chomping at the bit necessarily, but yeah, it's something I definitely see happening in the next 5 to 10 years.
Great. Well, if that happens, we will have even more numbers to talk about. But I should say, to get any level of fidelity into how these venture funds are doing, it is very difficult. And so great work on the story. And thanks for coming on to explain it to us. That is Natasha Mascarenhas, who covers venture capital for The Information. Well, that does it for today's show. A reminder that we are live on this stream Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I want to thank Amazon Web Services, who is our presenting sponsor for this production. And I want to thank you for tuning in. We really do appreciate your viewership. I am already excited for our next show tomorrow. And so until then, bye-bye for now.